Patching air bubbles in a polyurethane skin. In this tutorial, I'm going to pick up where I left off in a previous tutorial. In that video, I cast a prop head using polyurethane rubber as a skin material, and then I backed it up with a flexible foam core. Now, what I did originally, and go back to the first video if you missed this one, I sloshed around a skin of FP40 polyurethane rubber, pigmented flesh tone. And then once that gelled, I backed that up with soft flexible foam. And for that, I used variable density TC266 flexible foam. And I mixed that up to the 3-pound density to give it a nice soft core to that rubber skin. Now, when you cast an organic part like this, especially if you're casting a human head that has ear detail and wrinkles on the face or anything like that, from time to time, you will get air bubbles in your cast, and that's okay. You just need to know how to properly repair those air bubbles when they arise. And one thing I found, it's actually a lot easier to repair air bubbles with a polyurethane skin than just repairing air bubbles on just foam by itself. Now, to begin, when we demold our original foam and polyurethane rubber part, we want to do any patching and seaming as soon as possible because we're going to be adding additional polyurethane rubber over that cast part. And to make sure that we get a good bond, we want to do that as soon as possible. And one of the critical elements there is that we did not use a release agent when I cast this original part. So that means I don't have any release agent to remove from the cast part before I start patching air bubbles. And that's extremely important. Make sure if you do use mold release like E302 that you're ready to clean that off before you proceed with patching or seaming. Now here I'm mixing up more of the original skin material. This is FP40 mixed 2B to 1A by weight. And I'm doing a very small batch. This is about 60 grams total. So 40 grams of part B and 20 grams of part A, and again, that is by weight. And you want to be as precise as possible when you're working in these small batches like this, because the smaller the batch size, the higher the risk for error in mixing. And once I've got that mixed up, I'm ready to add a little bit of the 6832 medium flesh pigment, and I'm going to thicken that with FiberThick. Now, really important, uber important, remember that FP40 is a fast setting material. That FP stands for fast production. So this gives us a working time of about 4 to 5 minutes at room temperature and a demold time of about 90 minutes at room temperature. So it's important that you work quickly, but also accurately. So once I thicken that up with the FiberThick, I'm ready to start patching air bubbles. And what I'm going for is a thick spackle-like consistency. And you can keep adding the FiberThick until it's the thickness you want it to be. The nice thing, the FiberThick does come with that little scoop, so it's easy to measure out. And for patching air bubbles like this and seaming, I like a thick frosting-like consistency, almost like peanut butter. Now, once I've got that all mixed up, ready to go, I use a dental spatula to go into those areas like eyelids or ears and carefully patch those little air bubbles. And you want to apply just enough that you can fill in that air bubble and then feather the remaining rubber into the surrounding area. And I did all the patching in this video right after I did the original cast you saw in the previous tutorial. So this was maybe an hour or so after demolding. And the sooner you do that, the better the bond you're going to get between that original skin material and the new patch material that you're adding to the piece. And I can't stress enough, remember that if you're using any kind of mold release, you will need to clean that off. And that will differ based on the type of mold release you're using. So check the mold release, check with the manufacturer of the mold release, and see what is recommended to remove any release residue from that cast part. Now, if you need to, you can do this in multiple batches, just depending on how much patching and seaming you have to do with a particular project. But it's important to make sure that you only mix up what you can reasonably work with in that 4-minute working time. If necessary, you can work in multiple batches, but real important, take your time with this step and don't try to attempt more than you can reasonably accomplish within that 4 to 5 minute working time. Now also, it's important to note that FP40 is a very low viscosity pourable rubber, so Typically, air bubbles like this are kept to a minimum just by way of that low viscosity. This particular piece had some funky ears and just a couple of spots on the eyelids to fix, but overall, this was a nice, clean part right out of the mold. And one other little detail is the color. Make sure you remember exactly what your color formula is, so when you go to patch, that everything is uniform. So here it was easy because I was using more of that medium flesh tone and just mix that into that batch. But if you're doing a more complicated color, you want to keep track of that. And this goes back to my video I did earlier on coloration of polyurethanes. You can also pre-pigment your part B to all one shade. And that way, everything out of that gallon pail of part B is all going to be one uniform color. And that's real important when you're matching colors like this and you've got a project where you will be patching air bubbles or doing multiple parts that all need to be a uniform color. Now, once your patching and seaming is done, you're ready to let your piece sit and cure completely, and then you can move forward to the painting stage. But more about that in just a minute. For now, it's important to note that all of the material links for everything in this video will be linked in the video description, so be sure to check out those links. And if you didn't check it out already, be sure to go back and check our tutorial on casting this head and the whole process of making a urethane rubber skin with a foam core. So check that out. I'll link that on the end screen. Now, for painting, you can paint cured FP40 using SC89 and SC89 thinner. Now be sure to check the end screen. I'll link to some previous tutorials that might be of interest to you. Of course, the video where we cast the original head with the foam core, as well as some other videos on FP40. So thanks for watching, and if you haven't already, be sure to like and subscribe and click the little bell icon so you get notified when I post new content. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.